Is organic compost worth it? I had that thought when I started out on this journey, and here we are. To figure out this question, I set up an organic compost system and a normal one to test between the two. If you don't know, organic compost is a create, slice, and dice kind of mechanism that is basically bone meal in a 5x5 area. If we set up a sprinkler here with a fluid tank with liquid fertilizer, it will drop out a bone meal effect on all the crops in a 5x5 area. You might think, wow, that's pretty good, but it doesn't look that fast, does it? I've run this for probably 15 minutes or so. We have 1,058 wheat with almost 2,000 seeds. On our control group here, where we don't have any sprinkler, this is just normal crop growth. In the same 15-minute span, we have 15 wheat and 30 wheat seeds. This gives us about a 700% increase over the normal crop growth. That's pretty good. That basically means you'll need 700 times bigger area to get the same rates as you would over here. Does that mean it's worth it though? Kinda, but maybe not really. If you're playing in a single player world and you're only making food for yourself, you probably don't need it. But if you want to grow a ton of crops in a relatively small area, then this is absolutely worth it. In my survival world, I have been a-okay with a couple of crop farms here and there, but that's single player. If you're playing on a multiplayer server with a bunch of people, or you just love eating food for some reason in the game, then you might want liquid fertilizer. There are also some other applications to organic compost, like getting rich soil if you're using Farmer's Delight, and there are a couple of other mods that provide additional options with this. So if you want to learn or make a farm on how to use it, this is the place for you. I have decided that these farms will focus on tileability, scalability, and not so much on supplying them with enough items. The reason for this is all of these farms will let you use just oak trees and a rice farm to supply all the items you need, but that won't make it as fast as possible. Providing your own source of bone meal will be faster. It'll increase the rates dramatically, but if you don't want to do that, you will get plenty of items here. We're starting off with kind of the first set of farms here. This is a almost identical system to the one over here, except this one makes liquid fertilizer and this one just makes organic compost. This 2-wide, tileable with an asterisk farm produces about 2 organic compost a minute, or 120 per hour. That equates to 30,000 millibuckets of liquid fertilizer per hour as well. And as you heard me say, I did say tileable. I threw in an asterisk there because it isn't perfectly tileable. As you can see, we're using some cogwheels here, and cogwheels next to cogwheels breaks them, which is how we move on to the 4-wide tileable version, again with an asterisk. You can see here that I have removed some of the kind of bits here that make kind of the tileable version redundant. You're not going to need those in this version, and we also have a combined output for the organic compost. The same is true for liquid fertilizer. Those are both brought to the same basin. This farm scales pretty much linearly with the amount of processing that you have. As long as you supply it enough resources, it will produce that much. If you supply your own source of bone meal, it will go even faster. I haven't tested it, but the main bottleneck is a lack of bone meal. The last set of farms is in the back here, and this is an all-inclusive farm. This is what we're going to be building today. We're going to be building, I guess, both of these at the same time. They are almost identical, except for the fact that this one, instead of having a barrel where this goes into, it goes into a basin to make liquid fertilizer. That just comes out of the smart fluid pipe. Otherwise, they are the same, and this will be the focus of the block by block tutorial. If, however, you're using any of the schematics, I'm going to walk you through how each of these work, how to set it up, and all of that fun stuff. But before we get into that, the first thing you need to know, there are 2 required mods for this. Create, slice, and dice, as I mentioned before. That is kind of required for liquid fertilizer. And the other one is Farmer's Delights, which is how you get the organic compost to begin with. So you're probably here because you want both of those things anyway, and you have those mods installed. But if you're not somehow, that's what you need for this to work. Otherwise, it uses just the basic create components. But let's get into how the farm works. We have 2 inputs here. The first one is going to be for our rice, any of the oak or tree byproducts other than sticks. I'm assuming that you are filtering those out to begin with, which is what we do over on the all-on-one farm. I just have it getting thrown into lava. So you're going to supply it with all of these items. On the lower belt here, you're going to have the dirt input. So we're going to first throw in just some dirt like this, and then up at the top, we're going to throw in a stack of each, and you'll see what starts happening. So we have slicers with wooden axes and flint knives. Those are the cheapest knives and axes that you can make. These things don't burn durability like a deployer would, so you don't need the fancy schmancy diamond or netherite axes or knives. The knives will mine the rice panicles into straw and rice, while the slicers will mine the stripped oak logs. As you can see, we're already making organic compost, and this is what I was talking about. Bone meal is the limiting factor. You can see we have plenty of straw, plenty of tree bark, and plenty of dirt. We just don't have enough bone meal per hour. So if you speed this up, you can drastically improve the rates of the farm really easily. If you don't have a bone meal farm, I have that on my channel. I'll put it in the time card up on the top right of the screen that I can't even reach, but you know it's there. So if you want to check that out, you obviously can. So as we mentioned, the axes cut up the wood, knives cut up the rice, and then they get brought onto the same belt. You might be asking why we're not using tunnels for this, and that is because if you just use normal tunnels, it will back up the belt. The rice and the wood get cut in one block alone increments, which fill up the belt too much unless we drop it out in stacks of 16. Once dropped out, it'll get placed on this belt where it'll either go into this hopper as long as it is not stripped oak logs, or the straw will get dropped just straight into the basin, while the tree bark will get dropped onto this belt and go into the basin from here. As you saw, the stripped logs are going to come into this output chest, so you do get logs as an output, which is awesome to see. And then when all the items are into this basin, it'll make organic compost and drop it out in this chest. As you can see, we get a stack of each of those items and we get 6 organic compost with plenty dirt, straw, and tree bark left over, which means if you just add in a bunch more bone meal, you can get a lot more from what you put into it. The 4-wide version is exactly the same, except it splits it up into 4 wide increments and distributes it more evenly. This is better for higher throughput, but has the same underlying principles of knives cutting up the rice, axes cutting up the logs, and all of them feeding into one or the other of the 2 basins here. The basins then feed into the same output chest here, and this is where the stripped logs will go. The exact same things are happening over here with the liquid fertilizer. We are dropping out the organic compost and it's getting placed into this basin. The recipe for liquid fertilizer is just water and organic compost. The water we get just from this infinite water source here that we are using some oak trapdoors in a kind of clever manner to keep the footprint down, creating this infinite source. You can then pipe out the liquid fertilizer from here and do whatever you want with it. The same is true for the 4-wide version. We have both organic compost buoys going into the same basin for liquid fertilizer, and you can, as I said, get the output straight from there. Now to go over the all-in-one version. This one is a little bit bigger and a little bit more complicated, but has the same structure. We'll be going over how to set up both schematics here in a second, but to turn the farm on, it is simple. You just let it go on its own. It'll cut down all of these trees, which were growing as I was talking. And when that happens, it'll come back, unload all of the items that it has, as long as this is moving, which it actually isn't, so let's turn that on. But once that has happened, this will continue to harvest this farm, grabbing any trees or rice that it gets, and bringing it over to this system. Obviously, you need to set up axes and knives in here, which I didn't do, so we have a bunch of logs everywhere. And once you've waited a little bit for this to get up to speed, we should see that this is filled with a bunch of stuff. The rice, at least for the beginning, takes a little bit longer to grow, since it needs to grow up from the smallest little bit under the water to, as you can see there, the biggest boy. But once we've done that, we should be getting straw in here and our first organic compost. The same will be true for over here, but instead of organic compost, we're obviously getting liquid fertilizer. To go over how to set up the schematics, the kind of first 4 here are all going to be the same. The 2-wide or 4-wide tileable, whether it's organic compost or liquid fertilizer, will be the same, at least mostly. We're going to go over the liquid fertilizer one because this one has 1 or 2 more things that you need to do. The first thing is you're going to need to make sure water is on this andesite encased cogwheel and the smooth stone block here. That is so that we can get the infinite water source for the pump to pull from. That is not needed for the organic compost. What is needed for both of them though is getting in knives of any kind. It can be flint, can be iron, oops. It can be diamond if you wanted. We'll just need any type of knives in here. Those guys don't break, they don't deteriorate. You don't need a fancy one if you don't want to. We'll also need axes in these 2 slicers. This is going to be used to cut up the wood. The next thing you'll need to do is to power the farm. Obviously, you'll want it spinning the correct way, so if you plug it in and it's going the wrong way, just make sure you spin it around and make sure it is going 64 RPM. That's probably the best baseline speed. You can obviously speed it up if you need. If you want to go to 256, you obviously can. If that is the case, this smaller organic compost one uses 5,000 about stress units, while the liquid fertilizer one uses closer to 7,000. You can always mess with the speed of this. The speed doesn't super matter as long as it's, I think, above 32 is the minimum that mixers can actually operate at. 64 is going to be the default speed probably that you're going to want to run this. If you are backing up like crazy though, you can obviously increase this to 256 if you wanted to, and that is the max speed that this can go. You'll then obviously need to set up the inputs. So here I have oak logs, saplings, apples, and rice panicles going onto this belt here. You can change that up if you want to use a different set of systems, or if you want your own bone meal, you can funnel that in to this hopper here from up here. If you just want to use my system though, I have oak saplings, apples, and rice going in here with just an oak tree farm and a rice farm over there. So you can set that up here. And then we're just going to need dirt in this bottom barrel and belt over here. You can obviously just extend this belt for as long as you want, or route your dirt farm over to this if you already have one, but that should be all that you need to do. You'll then obviously need to set up the output. You're going to get both an output of over here, stripped oak logs in this barrel. You'll probably want to change that to something else because this farm goes through oak logs like crazy. So you're probably going to want a bigger storage system for this barrel. And then you're going to want an output for this liquid fertilizer. You can just pipe this over, as long as you have a mechanical pump in the center somewhere, pipe this over to just a fluid tank or to one of your main farms where you want to actually use the liquid fertilizer. And that's honestly it for the smaller of the 4 farms. For the 2 bigger farms, I am going to go over everything that you need on this liquid fertilizer farm here. It is going to be the exact same for the organic compost, so just follow along. Before we begin though, this farm uses about 10,000 stress units, so you'll need to hook this up to some sort of power that produces at least that much. I know a max windmill produces 8,192, I think. So you can add that and a couple of water wheels or a steam engine or whatever else you want to do. To start though, we are going to set up the slicers. So we're just going to right click our knives onto the back 2 slicers here, and then our axes onto the front 2. We're then going to come over to, I guess, kind of the front over here, and we're going to put lava on this block here. Since I pasted it in creative, it's already there, but you're just going to throw lava there, and then you're going to waterlog this mechanical drill, and the water should flow into this little cubby here. Don't put a water block there, that'll maybe mess things up. As you do that though, we should create a cobblestone block, and that'll be good because this drill should be right in front of it to mine it. You're then going to come underneath here if you're doing the liquid fertilizer farm, and you are going to set up the infinite water source. You'll have it like this, where you just have the mechanical pump kind of pointing to nothing at the moment. You're going to waterlog this trapdoor here, and then place a water block there, and you should get an infinite source on this block here. You're then going to come over to here and make sure this chest is actually connected. And when you do that, I would put in just a couple of dirt blocks into this hopper here. You should have 4 in there, and you should see that they drop out onto this depot. If that's the case, then you're good and that chest is working as expected. You're going to come over here and place down a minecart in this cart assembler section if there isn't one already. Along with this minecart here, we're going to check and make sure that there's a minecart on this block here. That is this one behind the smart observer. And then once you've done that, we can turn on the farm and turn on this moving back and forth contraption. The way you do that is just by putting a smooth stone block directly into the smart observer, and it will freak out for a second and then start going. This is basically just a clock that will, once this comes back, the smooth stone block will appear. This will detect powering this again and setting the farm off. It basically just lets us shrink the size down by 1, because otherwise this farm would not be able to mine these first couple blocks for whatever reason, I don't even know. Once we've done that, you should see a bunch of rice panicles and oak logs getting cut up, and we should get a large influx of organic compost for the initial bits. This will slow down once we run out of bone meal and excess blocks here. If you want to speed this up, you can obviously increase the size of this farm, but this is pretty close to the maximum that you can get for just these 2 things here. And once you've done that, you will already get some liquid fertilizer. You can see here that we have 250 millibuckets, which is 1 organic compost worth of liquid fertilizer, which means the farm is working. As is true with the other ones, you can pull the liquid fertilizer out of here into a fluid tank or something else. It doesn't super matter, but yeah, that's where you pull it out of. If you're running into any issues, mainly with this farm here, like, let's say, everything is backwards for some reason, like all the belts are going the wrong way, if that's the case, all you're going to need to do is come to this rotation speed controller and invert the 256 from clockwise to counterclockwise, and that should flip the belts around to make them go the right way. If you want to turn off the minecart contraption again, you'll just have to remove this smooth stone from the observer, and then I'll stop it. You can then just place another one in, and you will be back off and running. You'll also need to place in a lava bucket into this lava cauldron. That is just that we can delete any of the sticks that come from the farm here. That's enough schematic talk. Let's get on with the block by block tutorial. Again, as I mentioned, we're going to be building this thing. If you want to build one of these, they are really simple. You just need a couple of slicers, a couple of tunnels, and some belts. And if you don't know what a schematic is, I would definitely Google how to set those up, but there are schematics of these down in the description, as always. For the block by block tutorial though, we are going to be building this bad boy, and I guess maybe the liquid fertilizer one, because that's an easy addition that we can do at the very end. But we are going to be building the one with the included farm that gets us close to 2 organic compost per minute, or 120 an hour. I say that, we already have 20. This may be faster than I think. I don't know though. And as you can see, we are kind of low on the amount of items here, so you probably can increase this farm size by a little bit if you really want to speed up and get the max amount that you can. But let's get into building this thing. All the ingredients for this are going to be in the description down below. I'll have chapters on the video so you can skip around to parts if you want to do that. I don't know why you would for a block by block tutorial, but if you want to, be my guest. And in this farm, we're using rich soil for all of the plants here. You don't need that at all. This just kind of speeds up the growth rate, I'm pretty sure, but not by a crazy amount. It'll probably be fine if you just use dirt and plant stuff that way. I wouldn't stress about it too much if you don't have rich soil. To start this, we're going to need a 26 by 10 by however tall a big birch tree can grow area to set this up. The kind of front of the farm is going to be on the front left-hand side where all of the kind of brain is, and then the rest is going to be farmland. Of course, I built it in a slime chunk. Back to peaceful mode we go. That is fixed. This farm also, as you can see, has basically a fully open layer except for the very end where we have our organic compost coming out. You can either move this around or place a thing off that or off here if you wanted to. Just make sure you set a filter to organic compost, and then you can remove that bottom row if you want, but we are going to be building it that way, which basically means you can build that little bit in the floor and then everything else can be floor level. To start this farm, we are going to start with the farming part of it. I bet that's surprising. To start this, we are going to place in a grass block or really anything. It doesn't super matter. All the way around the edge of the far right-hand side, if this is the front of it. So that will be a 10 block long area here, and then we're just going to place 9 more blocks for 10 in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that we should have a perfect square for the rice crop farm. I don't know why I said it like that. Once we've done that, we can place in the middle bits here. I'm going to use grass or dirt. It doesn't matter. You can use rich soil. That's what I have in the schematic just because it's a little bit faster, but I'm going to do grass this time just to show you that you can do it this way. Next, we're going to fill in this whole area with water. It should be really easy. There we go. That is already done. And then we're going to hoe all of these things. Do we not do that? How does rice work? I guess we just place it. Oh yeah. And then you just place in these rice balls from Farmer's Delight onto all of these blocks. Once we've done that, let's move on to the oak farm. The oak farm is going to be at the same level as the original bit of rice here, which is technically diagonally one down from the wall that we made around it. And this thing is also going to go 10 blocks over in total. So if we fill this in, and then we go 9 additional blocks from this one block out we've already went, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that should be the size of the farm that we're doing. Next, we just need to fill this whole thing in. And once we've done that, we can place in all the saplings that we need, which is now done. Next, we're going to get in the minecart contraption that harvests this whole thing. So we're going to place just a line of building blocks all the way across here. And I actually lied. We're going to extend this grass block layer out by 1 block here so that it lines up directly with the very front edge of the farm. And on this first kind of line of blocks that we made for the rails, we're going to place in a controller rail facing back towards the back of the farm. We're then going to place just a bunch of power rails up until the very last block where we're going to place another controller rail going the opposite direction. So basically the cart's going to come here, go bounce back and forth, breaking all of the blocks or harvesting all the crops that we need, and then coming back to the back. We're going to need to power all of these rails here. So we're going to throw down a lever on top of this controller rail block, and then we're going to just throw another lever here. It just needs to be on like the front bit of the farm because this bit is air, and then it gets into a little bit complicated stuff that is in the way. On this unpowered controller rail in the back of the farm here, we are going to place in our cart assembler and set this to lock rotation. This is going to make sure that the minecart doesn't spin around with your saws and harvesters and potentially hit you, but more importantly, look stupid. And my apologies, this actually needs to be 11 blocks deep. So I'll throw that on the screen while I'm explaining that you need a 10 by 26. It actually needs to be 11 by 26. So I am increasing that now. And on this final block, we're going to place in a smart observer, but first we need to place a block directly above it so that this arrow is pointing into this block. If we then put in a smooth stone here, it'll power it. We don't want to power it yet though, but we will eventually. Now let's get in all of the minecart bits. We are going to place a barrel directly on top of the cart assembler, smooth stone block next to the barrel on both sides here, the tree farm side and the smart observer side. We're going to place a portable storage interface facing towards the back of the farm here, with another one directly in front of it, so that when the minecart's like right here, the portable storage interfaces will connect and transfer the items that they need. Then we're going to go down and place in a mechanical saw facing towards the tree farm area, and then we're going to go along the whole length of the tree farm until we get to right here, where we're then going to place 2 smooth stone blocks and then a bunch of temporary blocks. These we're just going to use so that we can get in our harvesters, because you can't place harvesters on nothing. It just won't work. I'm trying to right click so hard. You need a block there, but these are temporary because once we've gotten all the harvesters in all the way along across the rice area, we're just going to break these blocks and there we go. If some of your trees are growing, you will have to delete them for this step if they're in the way like mine are. But directly above the mechanical saws, but a block higher, we're going to start placing in our deployers. I would rotate them so that their filter is facing towards you if you're on the outside of the farm. And then you're just going to go all the way across with your deployers so that they cover all of the saws here. This is so that the deployer, once the saw has broken down the tree, the deployer can replace down the sapling to make the tree grow again. Speaking of saplings, we are going to need to place in a sapling for all of these filters here. So that is the only thing the deployers try to place instead of trying to place like a stick, because that's stupid. Now let's get to gluing everything together. We're going to want to glue this area excluding this portable storage interface, excuse me. So we're going to glue together this smooth stone with this barrel with this portable storage interface here, but not this one. Don't glue this one. And then we're going to glue this portable storage interface all the way across to the end of the deployers. And I'm going to glue a little line to the deployer to saw, and the same thing over on the other side, deployer to saw, and let's glue all the saws together. The last final glue bit is going to be all the way over to this end mechanical harvester, so you should see that everything is glued here, everything connected, everything good, except for this one portable storage interface that should not be glued. Now to test it, we're going to throw in a minecart under this cart assembler, make sure the cart assembler is set to lock rotation again, and then we're going to place in a smooth stone block on the smart observer. You should see it go and start breaking stuff or harvesting stuff if you have rice here. It should then come back and keep going back and forth. I'm going to turn off that filter now so that it stops moving. Next, we're going to get in the item kind of transportation and collection for the items that we farm out. We're going to get in a 3-wide belt here coming directly down below this portable storage interface, and we're going to put a brass funnel coming from this portable storage interface. That should connect up with the belt, and that'll eventually go this way. We're going to place a shaft here. This is basically like, oh, this belt's going here. There's a belt here that's going to go this way eventually, but we're not going to get that in yet. First, let's set up the trashing system. We're going to place down a brass funnel going downward here, and then we're going to grab our cauldron and our lava bucket and place lava in here. We're then going to grab a list filter, set it to deny, and then place in oak logs, oak saplings, apples, and rice panicles. This is basically just meaning anything that we don't want continuing into the farm, let's throw out now. That basically just includes sticks as long as you don't like kill a zombie in here or something. So it's basically just deny everything that we don't want. Next, we're going to set up the dirt farm. That thing is a little bit complicated, but it is really cool and compact. We are going to set up a rotation speed controller and set this to 64 RPM. I don't think the rotation on this matters. This is basically just how fast will this plow place down to turn the coarse dirt into normal dirt. Connected to this rotation speed controller on the cogwheel itself is going to be a vertical gearbox into a gearbox. The gearbox is going to go into a deployer facing straight upwards. This is going to be placing our coarse dirt to get turned into normal dirt. And then we're going to place a shaft connected to this gearbox here. Against this shaft, we're going to place a vertical gearbox, 2 more shafts, and then a vertical gearbox going sideways into a normal gearbox into our mechanical drill that will be mining our cobblestone for the cobblestone generator. Continuing on with this vertical gearbox here, we're going to place in 1 more vertical gearbox with a large cogwheel on top of it. And then we're going to get in our millstone diagonal from this cogwheel. This cogwheel is basically going to spin this millstone's kind of cogwheel inside of it, doubling the speed of the millstone, which is actually really good. That's what we want. And letting us power this cogwheel underneath the millstone. That is going to then kind of wrap around in this like little L shape, which is going to be used to power the mechanical arms that we will get in once we have all of the depots and stuff that we need. Speaking of depots, we're going to place one in like this little corner of the L. That will have all the gravel that is made come out to sit on this depot. The mechanical arms are going to go into some mechanical crafters. So we're going to shift click in 2 mechanical crafters going to this deployer, and then 2 more on top of them going down. So you should have down, down, and over, and this will make our coarse dirt with the gravel and dirt. Now we're going to get in our miner for the dirt itself, and I actually messed up here. We're going to break this shaft that we placed in earlier, and we're going to replace it with a vertical gearbox. We're then going to place in a normal gearbox directly connected to it. And then we're going to place in our mechanical drill connected to that vertical gearbox on top of this mechanical crafter. So this deployer is going to place in dirt right here. This drill is going to then break this dirt, but we need a thing to pick up the dirt, which is where a hopper comes in. We're going to first need to set up a chest system here so that we do get the hopper. So we're going to place a chest kind of diagonally above this observer deployer. And then we're going to place another chest block directly next to it. We're going to place a hopper going into this block here of the chest. And then on the other one, we're going to place in a depot with a brass funnel coming out of it. This is where our dirt is going to come out of. We can then get in our mechanical arms. So first we're going to right click this depot here so that it has blue surrounding it. And you can see at the bottom of my screen that said take items from the depot. And we're going to place them in, it kind of doesn't matter as long as they're diagonal from each other. So I'm going to do the bottom left and the top right. And then I'm going to place the deployer. Actually, we'll need some temporary blocks here because deployers kind of freak out if you try to place them on a deployable pickable object. So let's place in some temporary blocks, get a deployer, click the depot once so that it's covered in blue, and then double click the diagonal bottom left and top right of the mechanical crafters and place them there. We're going to do the same thing, but for the gravel side now. So we're switching to the top left and bottom right this time. And then we're going to right click this depot once to turn this one blue. And this is where gravel is coming in. You can see now that these cogs should be powering this mechanical arm, but we still don't have something powering this mechanical crafter. So we're going to place in a cog here, and we're going to get this connected up to power with a vertical gearbox that connects this cogwheel up to this one. Now we're going to get in the plowing system, which is just the minecart contraption thing over there. So we're going to get in line with this drill and place a permanent block kind of directly behind the chest, in between the chest and the belt. We're going to place a rail on top with a cart assembler on top of it. We can put it in the minecart now, it doesn't super matter. And then we're going to place a smart observer. This is super the wrong orientation, but if we grab our wrench, we can right click it until it is correct. We want the arrow pointing towards this. So I just right click the side of it so that it got the right weird direction. And then I right click the top to spin it around twice. We're going to need to set the filter of the smart observer to coarse dirt. That is going to make it so that when coarse dirt is placed, this cart becomes a contraption. The plow plows, does its thing, and turns it into normal dirt. The next part of the contraption is 2 linear chassis on top of this cart assembler. This basically just reduces, or I guess removes, the need for any glue here because these 2 linear chassis connect. And then we're going to place a mechanical plow on the front kind of bit of this linear chassis block, and that should lead directly above this empty block here where our coarse dirt is going to go. You can test that the farm works by just placing in a coarse dirt. You should see that this powers on, this cart turns into a minecart contraption, making all of this kind of float up a little bit. That just means it's a cart thingy. And then once it does that, this plow will plow the block under it, turning it into dirt. And there you go. Once this is powered, obviously this mechanical drill is going to break it for us, but that is kind of the gist. Right now is a good time to place in dirt in here. You only need 2 to start this farm. The more you put in, the quicker it will work and fill up the organic compost or liquid fertilizer, but you can do 2 and it'll make plenty pretty quickly. Underneath here, we're going to get in our delivery system for the organic compost making. We're first going to get in the belt that brings the dirt over to the organic compost crafting, and then we're going to get in our threshold switch under the side of this chest. If you right click it, you should see that we are just a little bit above 0% because we do have 3 dirt in the chest. We're going to scooch this all the way down to 5%. And this one up to 1%. We're then going to invert the signal so that it is powered actively, and then we're going to place in a brass funnel next to it. The brass funnel you should see is powered. If it isn't, just make sure the signal is inverted and the top half is powered. If the top half is powered and this still isn't powered, then you might have too many items in this chest, and that's fine. If you have a bunch of dirt in there, it'll get dropped out and fed, and that's great. Once we have the hopper in, make sure it is pointing downward onto the belt. This will drop any items that are on the chest down onto the belt so that it can be actually used properly. We're going to extend this belt by one more block, and then we're just going to place in a shaft here. Just like here, we're going to eventually get a belt in, but not yet. Now let's get in the main power source for the farm. This is going to be our rotation speed controller, large cogwheel, and kind of the encased chain drive that powers quite a few of these things. So to start, we're going to place in a rotation speed controller going sideways here. We do not want it connected to this belt with a large cogwheel on top of it. We're going to set this to, I'm going to just set this to 64 RPM. I think that should be enough to power a farm this big. If it's not though, we can just increase this to 128 or 256. The only reason I'm doing 64 is because right now it'll save us stress units. This thing uses 10K at max speed, and if we can half that or quarter it, that'll be great. So once we have the large cogwheel and the rotation speed controller in, we're going to get in our encased chain drives. So we're going to connect it up to this side of the rotation speed controller, this bottom half here. And then we're just going to carry this up, connect it up with this belt. You can see that this is a weird kind of looking thing. This is 100% intended in the create mod. I don't know why, don't ask me why, but it works and that's great. We can basically just rotate an encased chain drive so that it powers a couple of different things. So we're going to bring it up so that it connects up with this belt, and then one block higher because it'll connect with a shaft and a couple of other things going this way. Before we get that shaft connecty boy in, we should probably get in the belts, since that connects to the belts. From this shaft, go over all the way until one past this millstone block. So we're going to need to place in a temporary block, and then the shaft here. And then we're going to grab a belt, connect it up to this one, and there we go. We can then place a shaft connected to the encased chain drive we placed a little bit earlier. We're going to throw in 2 vertical gearboxes, and then we're going to do an encased chain drive that connects to the vertical gearboxes, and then another one using the same kind of swishy swooshy rotation thing so that it will line up with this belt. And then we're going to, and then we're just going to throw in a shaft here. We're then going to place another shaft coming out, one from the belt. And then we're going to place another one here, one before this belt, connect these two with a belt. And this will be our second line over there that we will split half of the items onto. We're then going to get in our belts for the dirt processing. We're going to come over to in line with this belt and then scooch one over. And we're going to connect that shaft up with a belt to the shaft that we placed way earlier in the video. We're then going to actually just extend this belt by one so that it connects up to the rotation speed controller, and that will be where it is getting powered from. On this side of the belt, on the kind of inside bit, we're going to place an encased chain drive, and this is where we're going into the ground just a little bit. We're going to place another encased chain drive directly below it with a shaft coming out of it. This is where our output is going to be for the organic compost so that it goes into either a barrel or into a basin to make liquid fertilizer. Let's get that basin in now to make the organic compost. So we're going to go diagonally up to the right from this dirt belt that we just placed. We're going to place in an andesite funnel from the dirt belt going into the basin here. And then we're going to place in a smart chute going down currently onto nothing, but this will eventually be a belt here. Let's place that in now. We can get a shaft on the other side of the smart chute, connect both of those with a belt, and then we're going to leave this little area till the very end because that'll depend on whether you're just storing the organic compost or converting it into liquid fertilizer. We are able to get some of the items going into the basin here. So we're going to place a funnel going down kind of like this. And apologies, I did mess up here. We're going to just move this encased chain drive over 2 blocks there. And we can break the original encased chain drive, and we're just going to extend this bottom belt by 1 and place a shaft in this middle belt. Right where the encased chain drive was, we're going to place a 2 shaft belt block, wide block. Those were real words. An andesite funnel going into the basin from here. And then we're going to grab a smart chute coming down. This is where our tree bark, I think that's what it's called, is going to be coming from and going into the basin. And then the rest is just going to continue on the line, which is what we're going to do now. All of the other blocks that aren't being used, whether it be saplings or apples or extra tree bark or straw or rice, I suppose, are going to go into this composter to get turned into bone meal. So we're going to place a composter in line with this belt here, hopper above it going straight into it, hopper below it going into the basin. We're then going to just place a brass funnel going into the hopper from here. Let's get in the last bit of funnel and barrel action here. We're going to place in diagonally up from this belt here, a barrel with a brass funnel going into it and a brass funnel coming out of it. The brass funnel coming out, we are going to right click and hold and set this to exactly 16. This, as I mentioned way earlier in the video, is just going to make it so that the belt doesn't back up. Now that all that's in, let's get the filters in for everything here. So we're going to grab our tree bark and place it into this smart chute right there. That is the same one as this one right here, so you can place it in there if that's a little bit easier to get to. We're going to place organic compost in the bottom of this smart chute and into this basin. That'll make it so that you don't make anything else. I think paper something can be made with tree bark and sugar or bone meal, or I don't know. Something stupid can be made, so make sure you set this to organic compost as well as this. We're going to set straw to this filter of this funnel here. And then we're going to grab a list filter and set it to stripped oak logs and then click deny list. And that will take anything that isn't a stripped oak log and place it in this funnel to get composted. Obviously, we can't compost stripped oak logs, so we're going to grab another brass funnel here on the side, set it to stripped oak logs, and have it drop out. That will go out onto a chute and into a barrel. I would recommend changing this to a belt that leads it back to your main storage system somewhere, because this thing uses a ton of logs. This barrel will fill up rapidly, and then the farm will stop working, because this will then fill up with stripped logs as well. Now let's come back over here and finish up this cobblestone generator. We're going to place a hopper going straight into the millstone here, and this block is where our cobblestone is going to generate from. We're going to place a permanent block directly below the mechanical drill and another one to the side of it. Then we're just going to place blocks around this so that we can get in our lava. And we should just be able to put lava here. That should flow one block over to the hopper. And once we get water in here, it will turn this into cobble. To place the water in here though, we're going to need to block off this little gap here, because then the water can just flow out. But once we've done that, we should be able to place this in, and it should flow just to this one block. That is good, because then it's not spilling everywhere, but also we are making cobble here, and it should be very consistent. The water should only flow down to this side, and you should get an infinite, basically, source of cobble there. Now let's get in the mechanical mixers and slicers. We're going to place in the mixer on top of this basin here. We're going to connect it up with 2 cogwheels, and then bring those cogwheels over a little bit and get in our mixers. So we're going to place slicer. We're going to place 1 slicer in line with this brass funnel that we placed earlier, and then we're going to do a checkerboard pattern. This is because these guys can only go in one direction, so if they're all next to each other, half of them will be going backwards. We're then going to just place in cogwheels that connect all of them together, and then in order to power this to the main farm, we're just going to place another cogwheel on top of this gearbox that then connects it to the whole system. We can then get in our axes and knives. These don't have to be any fancy ones. These guys don't take any durability. They will live forever. You don't need to spend money on a diamond one. We're going to put 2 wooden axes in the front 2 slicers, and then 2 flint knives in the back 2 slicers. You can change both of those to iron, both of them to diamond, to gold. It doesn't matter. This is just the cheapest materials, so that's what we're doing. We're then going to get in the last, definitely mandatory bit of the farm, which is just 2 brass tunnels here that should be on the default split. And that will just split the output between the 2 so that they run at a little bit of a faster speed. Once we've done that, we are on to the output. If you just want to store the organic compost, you're just going to set up a barrel, grab a funnel, have it go into the barrel. You're done. That's it. End of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm just joking. For everyone that probably is building this farm for any reason, you want liquid fertilizer. This is a little bit more complicated. Not a ton. That's really not a lot. But we're just going to need to set up a infinite water source, a pump, and another mixer/barrel combo to make the liquid fertilizer. So from this belt, in the same place that we would place our barrel from, we're going to place in a basin. We're going to get a brass funnel going into the basin. That'll just be for all of the organic compost coming out. And then directly on top of the basin, we're placing in a mixer. We will need to connect this mixer up to power. There's not really a good way to do this, so we're just going to continue along the cogwheel line, bring it down, connect it up. Coming into the side of this basin here, we're going to grab a fluid pipe, bring it up 1 block, and then connect it up with a mechanical pump that is facing, obviously, towards the basin. This will be where our infinite water source is going to be, but we can't just put water here because most of the time, and this is a most of the time moment, you can't waterlog rails, at least in relatively recent versions. I think 1.18 is when it came out. I don't know. So we're going to want to put a trapdoor here just to prevent water from going out that way. And then we're going to place a block here, 2 blocks here so that it doesn't spill out anywhere else. And then we should be good. So now we can get in that trapdoor that I was talking about. We're going to waterlog that, place in another water block there, and then we have an infinite source. That infinite source will pump water into here. And that is kind of basically the system. All we need to do is now power this mechanical pump. To do this, we're just going to hook up a cogwheel to the side, vertical gearbox, another cogwheel, connect all 3 of those up, and we are good to go. Now we just need to connect this thing to power. You just need to connect this large cogwheel here, this shaft on either side up to power. If you want, you can throw in a clutch like I do in Schematics here. I just have a clutch going into a shaft with a creative motor. You can obviously power it from below, take in power, go over, or bring it over here. It doesn't matter. Or you could just power it from this side and that'll be good too. So once we get in power, I'm going to flick this to turn this on. We also need to connect you up. And once we've done that, it will start going. So this will take a little bit to get up to full speed, but we should see that a lot of things are happening. It might be good to speed this up, at least for the little bit, since while we were building this, we probably stocked up on a lot of wood and a lot of rice. So while this is going, we should see, first of all, that items are dropping off of this funnel, going onto this belt, getting split by the tunnels, and getting cut up by either the axe slicers or the knife slicers. We should see that all of those items are going over here. We should see that there is tree bark on this below belt here, which we do see, and that is good news. Oh, this is something that I forgot. This is why we go through these things. You can see here that we have stripped oak logs going onto this cogwheel. We obviously don't want that. So let's place in an andesite casing around this cogwheel, and that will act as a block, stopping any more items from coming out that way. While this is going as well, you should see that this barrel is accurately dropping stuff off once it hits 13 stacks of the item. And you don't really need to watch it. You just need to make sure nothing is like stacking up like crazy. And we should also see that a lot of items are coming into this composter to get composted. We are seeing that we have bone meal in this basin, which is great news. This basically means that we just don't have enough straw or enough dirt, which... that's a great point. This is not connected up to power. I forgot one little gearbox in the back side here. We are going to need to place that in, and if we can invert that, we should now see that this belt is moving, facing towards this direction. We should also run over here and verify that this cart is actually doing stuff. It now is. That is great news. While this is running and we are kind of gearing up to get all the items that we need, let's place in the smart fluid pipe to extract the liquid fertilizer from the basin here. So right now this is just water for me, but eventually you're going to get some liquid fertilizer, and we're going to need to set the filter of a smart fluid pipe to liquid fertilizer. I think the best way to do this is to just right click the button. I need an active bucket, and while you're in survival, as long as you don't get water, okay, maybe we break that for now, but as long as we don't get more water, we can get a bucket of liquid fertilizer once it makes that, and then we'll be good. Then you could just place that bucket into the smart fluid pipe and then take a mechanical pump output from there and do whatever you want with it. It will take a while for the dirt farm to spin up to full speed, but once we do get some dirt, we should see that this is using all of the items that it can. Right now low on straw, it looks like. But we see that we have liquid fertilizer here. We have 500 millibuckets, which means we made 2 blocks of organic compost. And we have a ton of bone meal stocked up. So once this rice grows, and it is getting close, it's at 67%. Once this all grows up, we're going to get a ton more organic compost. And that's the farm all done. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked it, leave a like. And if you're new, consider subscribing. And I'll see you all next time. Peace.